So, welcome to Wealth Revolution, the podcast where we break free from the old financial systems and explore subjects such as the new economy, conscious wealth, business, crypto, and AI. So, I'm your host, Luke Cowford, and today we have a great guest joining us, Simon Barry. And Simon brings over 2 decades of technology and business experience, including CEO and COO roles across the UK, Europe, the US, and Asia. His background covers financial trading systems, complex data, and AI fintech business. And yeah, it's great to have him today. I think it'll be a different kind of episode from what we've done in the past. I think it will be focused mainly on the creating of wealth through business and new technology. So yeah, welcome, Simon. It's great to have you here. And I think I want to get started off by just asking you, what are you focused on right now in your world? What's actually taking your attention day to day?
Yeah, so my main attention and my main focus is my startup business. It's called Knowbotics AI. It's really a passion, labor, and love for me. And what we do is we focus on helping neurodivergent children at school using three unique aspects. We blend together gamification, we blend AI in, and we blend in neuroscience to really help children who really need specialist help at school. We really try and help them do their best and ultimately thrive at school. So that's my main focus, and we're kind of in the build stage now, which is both daunting, scary, but also very, very exciting.
Yeah, it's always exciting. It's like fear and excitement at the same time, and
Or
when you
they're
have a passion
both
project like
in
that.
equal measure. Yeah, absolutely.
And what feels different about this season compared to previous ones? Because your career's quite vast. You've experienced a lot.
I've
I think you've done more than I said there. I've only skirted on some of it. I know we had a separate conversation. You were telling me about consulting in Dubai and all kinds of things, the blockchain. Yeah,
Absolutely. I
share
mean,
about
I've
that as well if you want. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, I mean, if we widen back by my career a bit, I came very much from a heavily financial background, working on trading systems, heavily into technology, heavily into the traditional financial systems, and that was a big part of my career. Touched on blockchain, touched on a lot of consultancy, but the to answer your question, going a bit back towards the startup thing. And this is very much different because it's a personal story. I'm doing this because my son suffers from neurodiversity. Through the process, I discovered that I have both ADHD and autism. So although this is a business, and it is a business in the traditional sense, and I've built startups before, this is very much also a personal journey. So I think in terms of how you approach it, it's very different. You're doing it for a kind of noble cause. You're doing it to help people and make a difference. And the really cool thing is we're at a cool place with technology, with things like AI, and how we can build
Mm.
software where we can actually deploy and build and do some really exciting things pretty quickly. So it's both a mix for me of drawing on the things I've done in the past, but also going into a completely different industry and a new market, and using cutting edge technology to really think,
Yeah.
how can I actually use that technology to make a difference in the world? Because we see a lot of stuff out there that is all about greed or personal wealth or building like that. But it's nice to say, okay, how can we use what's out there today and actually make a positive difference to how the
Yeah,
world
make it
works?
useful. I agree. I mean, all these things are just tools, aren't they? It's like, and some of the silly things people do now are, making fake videos, and it's about making it useful. So it makes people frustrated with some of these technologies sometimes. It's the same in the crypto industry. In the blockchain, it can be really useful, but people use it for things that just don't have value. So it's great to see someone, making use of it in that way. But yeah, I mean, going a bit deeper, when people look at your journey, they'll see lots of wins. Obviously, you've had a successful career and you've built a business and you're now building another business. But what were the harder, less visible parts that shaped how you operate today, would you say?
I mean, it is almost a corny message, but you learn more about your failures than your successes, because when you do things right, often you look back and you think, well, maybe I was just lucky or I just happened on it. But when you truly fail, then you start to learn about, well, what did I do wrong, or how can I do it differently? So one of my biggest failures, and I'm not afraid to talk about this, was when I was starting one of my early businesses. And I had that mix of hubris and arrogance and ego from a
Yeah,
fairly successful financial
always.
career, that I could just do everything. I could be CEO, I could be the software developer, I could be the marketing and salesperson, and I took all those roles on myself and tried to do everything. I made the tea, I did everything, and
Yeah.
to cut a long story very short, I ended up homeless. I ended up losing everything. I ended up pretty much bankrupt, and that was a really big eye opener because going from a stage where you think, oh, this is easy, I'll be rich. This is fantastically simple. Startups are wonderful. I've had this fabulous corporate career. It was a real eye opener because it tells you that A, you don't know everything, and B, you can't take on such a large burden of trying to do everything because it's impossible. You can't do it. So even though the lessons that came out of that period was kind of obvious, don't try and do everything yourself. Surround yourself with people who know what they're doing, and get help and support. At the time, it didn't seem like that, and that taught me some really valuable lessons, not only about your personal health and stress relief and that kind of stuff as well, which is equally important, I think, in any business, whether it's a startup or not, but also those journeys and those lessons about actually building a business properly and sustainably that actually turns into profit. And those lessons I've kept through to today. And I don't think I'd be where I am today if I didn't have those failures. I think, a lot of people
Yeah.
kind of see failure as that's the end, or it's over, or it's finished. But it's not the failure that's the problem. It's often how you deal with it. Are you going to keep repeating those
Yeah.
cycles, or are you going to look back and say, okay, I understand what I did there, and maybe some of the things that happened weren't my fault or poor timing or whatever it is, but how can I learn from those and grow? And those moments define us as people, and also help us define our careers, but also can help us define and make amazing businesses going forward.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, success is part of it is failure, and it's two sides of the same coin. You need
Of course it
those
is, yeah.
experiences, and yeah, it makes me think of I don't know if you've come across that model called the J curve, where you're kind of going at it at first, it's exciting, but there's always this big dip before it goes up exponentially, and that dip is where most people sort of fail and
Absolutely.
give in. They just give in and they don't carry on. You kind of have to break through that part, don't you? And and I always find that when we have a failure, it almost later on, I think it was Steve Jobs when it that said, you can't see the dots moving backwards sort of or forwards. I can't never remember which way around it is, but basically you can't see what happens in the past where it's going to lead you in the future. Because when it's happening, it feels this terrible thing, but later on you say, that actually has to happen to lead me to where I am now, which is always what it is. But yeah, I guess so in your journey, what used to matter to you no longer does anymore.
I
What
mean,
would you
I
say?
used to be quite, I think, money focused, especially when you're working
Yeah.
in the finance industry. You're supporting investment banks, you're supporting people with, massive wealth, and you can't help but get caught up in that world. And I used to work long hours, 16, 17 hours a day. I used to be very dedicated, and it's absolutely important to be dedicated and have passion to what you do. But for me, through that process, I went through burnout. I've had all sorts of issues from that because, again, it puts your life out of whack. It's great to have passion, but then you need to learn to say, okay, it's good to stop. It's good to take a rest. It's good to take stock. And, I've had a good career in terms of coaching and helping and being a consultant to a lot of startups and growing businesses. And one of the things I do is tell them to just take it easy, take that lunch break, take your holiday, take that time, because a lot of people end up thinking that it's all about grind and hard work and
Yeah.
working
Yeah.
faster and harder. And the thing is, what that does is it puts so much strain and stress on what you're doing that it becomes a place of where you're getting diminishing results, and therefore you think maybe I need to work harder, I need to put longer hours in, and that leads to stress, it leads to burnout, it leads to all sorts of issues. Whereas if you often take a step back, the problems that you thought you had, you take a sleep on it, you take a few days off, you often find your brain kind of magically solves them. If you start trusting your
Yeah.
team and the people around you, rather than thinking maybe you have to make all the decisions or you have to be at the center of everything, people come up with different ideas or different perspectives. And you'd be amazed how amazing things get when you just take a step back. So it's
Yeah.
I was in that space where I was maybe, a bit more of a workaholic, but I think it's good to, especially in a startup, understand that that kind of grind culture and that kind of work hard culture, I think is a myth. And I think you need to equally look after yourself and equally look after your health and your welfare. And if you've got kids, spend time with your kids. All of these things it are equal or greater in terms of that golden things that you can do. Yes, you can build wealth, you can do it all, but you can also have that golden time where you do see your family, you do look after your health, and you've got to really focus on what and why you're doing it for. If you get in this endless cycle of constant work and constant attainment, what are you doing it for? You're doing it for those golden moments that you can spend with your kids, right? Or, that amazing holiday that you should take, because you have to be honest with yourself. And that real epiphany for me is, yes, I'm working on a startup now. I have to work really hard, and I do work weekends and sometimes into the evenings, but I do also take time when I completely switch the technology off. I mute all the notifications, and I will go out and I will spend time in nature, and I will, decompress. And that is arguably more important than actually grinding away and putting in the hours into the business.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, it's the vibration that you're in really, helps you reach a different state where you make better decisions. And yeah, like you say, when you're in that grind culture, you're sort of worn down, burning out, stressed. You don't make great decisions, and that's one of the kind of mistakes. And it just doesn't go well. That's what I've learned the same lesson in that in business. Um, yeah, I totally agree. I mean, let's stay on the business questions, but what do you think people misunderstand about building and running a business long term?
Yeah,
What
I
experience
think
with business?
yeah, I think people will think that it's easy and think that, I could just put in all these processes in place and
Yeah.
everything will just work like clockwork as it's supposed to. Whereas, my experience, I found that businesses come in phases. So you have especially a startup, everything's in people's heads, everyone's excited, everyone's building, there's that buzz around it. But then you get to the next phase, it's where, well, you're not a startup, you're kind of a scale up. You probably have more
Mhm.
staff. You need to start documenting your procedures. You can't rely on one developer. You can't rely on one salesperson. You have to start expanding, which means you have to start formalizing stuff. And in that phase, you're losing what it is to be a startup, which is that excitement, and you're moving into a different phase. And the temptation there is to keep things that kind of startup-y, kind of fun, kind of, afraid to say it, but kind of loosey goosey kind of way. But you can't
Yeah,
do that
yeah,
when you're at scale. You have to evolve, and the same when you're at that scale up stage into being an SME or maybe a corporate. Then the it's entirely different. The way you need to behave and comport yourself, and the way you need to work is entirely different. And so many businesses fail when they're in that kind of transition stage, because what they believe is that, well, hang on, this is the way I've always done it. This is the way it's always worked. And that failure to evolve really can harm and kill your business. And this is
yeah.
especially important these days when you have more agile, smaller businesses with embracing technology that can come and disrupt your business flows. So if you're a 20-year-old business who's always done things a certain way, and you find you're in that, law of diminishing returns where what you're doing doesn't have the impact, you have to seriously look at yourself and your business and say, how can I disrupt my business or disrupt myself before a competitor comes on and outsources it or automates it or revolutionizes it. And we've seen it so many times with businesses, but with the
Yeah,
age we're in
yeah.
now, it's accelerating even faster. So, a great friend of mine basically said you need to disrupt yourself before others disrupt you. And that's
Yeah,
really
Blockbuster comes to mind. I mean, do you remember
like I said, the
Blockbuster?
Blockbuster, we've got
It's
Airbnb, we've
Teams
got
one.
Uber.
Yeah,
There's tons of examples of this, but
yeah,
these are great examples of how it works, and that's big lessons to take. It doesn't mean that we throw everything into AI or blockchain or jump on whatever buzzword it happens to be. It has to be innately compatible with what you're doing in your business. But so many businesses in that transition, or businesses are of a certain age, kind of think, well, this worked in 1994, why isn't it working in 2026? And the reason is it's very different now. So we have to evolve, we have to refresh ourselves, we have to grow. And that's part
yeah,
of an exciting way of businesses, because again, that's one of the things I do when I go in and consult. I look at those transition phases and I figure out the best thing to do, because often you need to change your staff. Often some people just aren't compatible. Often you need to completely, you know, blitz your procedures and wipe them. Often you need to automate the things that couldn't be automated even 6 months ago, but now can be done in 3 seconds. The world is changing rapidly, which means you can embrace it in an exciting way, or it can be very destructive, and
Yeah, yeah.
that's the opportunity here. Absolutely.
It's like, I think was it Tony Robbins that said, in the greatest adversities lies the biggest opportunities. It's these things are opportunities, they're waiting for you really. And if you see them as these challenges and problems, you don't change, because change is the only thing that's consistent is change, isn't it? And it's always going to change, and
1,000%.
that's one of the biggest things in business. But I mean, what's your view on what actually moves the needle in business mostly? People
Yeah, I
tend
mean,
to overlook.
I think for me, it's building that feedback loop. Again, a lot of businesses can be quite insular. When I used the example before of this is the way we've always done it. Well, listen to your customers, because your customers will, mostly be millennials now, that sort of age. What's their expectations of service and value and cost? What are their expectations in terms of access to technology? And it could even be simple things like, is your website mobile friendly? You'd be surprised how many just aren't.
Yeah.
Have you got an app, or can you pay with Apple Pay, or things like that? There are small things that could reduce friction for people using your services, buying your services, or accessing your services. Are you active on social media? All of these things are kind of many ways of doing it, but unless you have this kind of feedback loop with your potential customers or your current customers, you don't have that kind of ear to the ground in terms of what's happening. And again, a lot of businesses just don't have that relationship. And if you're not
Mm.
listening, you're not evolving. If you're not evolving, you're not changing. And then you just fall into that stagnation. And that is a very, very easy thing for a business to do. But the twisting it around and actually listening and evolving means you could spot your next business opportunity. A lot of big businesses out there, especially ones who have been around for multiple decades, are ones that often cannibalize older parts of their business structures because they've seen a new opportunity. IBM is a good example. Apple is a good example, where they've almost destroyed what you've seen as core parts of their business because they've gone into something different. So, that
Mm.
bravery
Yeah,
to
Apple
go
seems
and
to be
do that.
slowing down a bit. I noticed
It it
Apple,
it,
it
it
was really
does, and
innovative. Um,
it at some point, I think every company does, but there are good lessons to be looked at in terms of the last 15, 20 years, in terms of how things have been done, in terms of how you can stay relevant and large and almost disrupt yourself, because it's a challenge for any business, small or large, to do it. But it's a challenge that a business owner or a CEO or a team really has to challenge themselves to do, because that means you stay relevant and you stay in the market, and you're able to respond to those smaller upstarts that will try and take you on.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, maybe we shift into some sort of welfare questions. So, how has your relationship with money evolved as you moved into creating a business? I guess because one time you're kind of if you're is it a different relationship between money when you're a CEO to what it is when you're a business owner? Did you find it evolve
Yeah, I mean
anyway?
it's been very different, because I've been in on the corporate ladder, which is fine. You get your regular paycheck, and then on the flip side, when you're running a startup, you tend to forgo the paycheck, and sometimes you're putting a lot of your own
Yeah,
personal money in. So the relationship with money changes, because instead of expecting the money to land in your bank account, in terms of turning up
it's
to the office
uncertain.
40 hours a
Yeah,
week, you've got to earn it. You've got to work for it. You've got to pay for it. You've got to sometimes penny pinch. You've got to sometimes be quite clever. Sometimes you've got to fire staff. You've got to, shut down businesses. So money at the end of the day is the tool you need. And we do know that ultimately, if you've got a business that having a positive cash flow, having generating money is the way to make your business tick.
Yeah,
and then
sometimes people miss that, don't they?
I
The
completely
passion,
miss it. They focus on what widget can I build, or can I jump on this new piece of technology, instead of saying, well, okay, no, it's all about serving those customers, which again goes back to my other point about listen, right? So if we're
yeah,
building that relationship with those customers and having that positive cash flow, it really changes. That relationship with money becomes completely different, because it becomes a tool to fuel your business, to fuel your innovation, and to go forward, rather than it's just something I have to live on. It becomes that kind of fuel that you can say, okay, I can use this to make my business bigger, better, and at the same time I have to respect it. I have to be frugal and careful with it. Sometimes, especially in a startup, they can be little or none. Some of the startups I've had, it's basically been where, well, I can't afford to pay you. Well, I've got to convince you to get paid at some point in the future, and that's been a real challenge. But down the line, the money may come. So the relationship with money has changed over the years,
do you
and
think
it's
it's
still
more freeing though? I find it more freeing than when I mean, I've always had businesses, but when I think teenagers 16 and 19 is the only time I had a job, and I just found it really, I felt trapped. I felt like there weren't, like what I love about business is you just feel expansive. It feels really expansive.
absolutely, absolutely,
Is
yeah,
that
yeah.
the
And
case
again,
for you?
if you're essentially getting a paycheck, you are kind of trapped in a way. You know that
Yeah,
you might have 3 to 6 months worth of money left, should it ever happen, and who knows what can happen in any economy to any business. But if you've got your own business, then the freedoms you get to do it, to work in different countries, or to do different things, is massively expansive. And the positives around that are fantastic, and there are negatives, because things could go catastrophically wrong, and they often do. But the freedoms and the opportunity it opens in terms of doing that is great. And of course, you can do it around your business and your health, and your systems. I'm a night owl. I don't necessarily have to work mornings. I can sleep in. I can work on my business anytime, and allows me to work with clients in the US and in other countries later, and it suits
yeah,
me very well. But if for your usual 9 to 5 office job, that you could just say to your boss, oh, by the way, I'm going to roll in at 11, 12 o'clock, and just leave whenever I like. It just wouldn't cut it. So a lot of those freedoms you get with that kind of cash and that kind of control, when you're in control of your own business, are massive. And essentially, what you've got to think about is you're creating a lifestyle that should
yeah,
suit
yeah,
you. And again, a lot of founders and people who work on startups who are in their own business end up making their own cages for themselves around the money and the wealth around it. And you've got to really think, what am I trying to do, and what am I trying to achieve, and how can I end up being more free by this process, rather than it caging me in a bigger cage with bigger, higher stakes. So that's really important.
yeah. I agree. Yeah. So in terms, I mean, what's been big for me in business and my life as well is the kind of what I call self-development mindset stuff, or there's lots of words for it. How much do you believe mindset matters in creating wealth in general and
Oh, it's
businesses?
it's absolutely fantastically important, because there are people out there who, have a mindset that everything will go wrong, or I deserve to be poor, and things like that, and that it absolutely does affect you, because even on a deep subconscious level, it will affect how you go into sales. It will affect how you talk to your
Yeah,
customers. It will affect how you do your business, and you might not think it does, but it absolutely does. So, one of the things you've got to do, when, especially if you have a startup, or you're leading a team, is you have to have that internal confidence that you know what you're doing. If you've got to be trusted as a leader and respected, and building stuff, you need to know that this stuff will work. For me, in the stage I'm at with my startup, we're pre-money, so I'm convincing people to come on board before it's got any cash flow. So part of this is that internal belief that I have, that I've done the right thing, that this is the right idea, that we're building the right technology, that I've done the right research, and that the people coming on board have to ascribe to the same mission values. And that's really important,
yeah.
because again, it kind of changes the dynamic there. So it's important to have that perspective and understand what that is, and have that relationship going forward.
Is the software something you'll be using like sent to schools then, or is it how will it work? Is it for the consumer
Yeah, so
yeah.
Nobotics, in terms of how it works, is we primarily want to sell to parents, so parents of
Oh, great,
neurodivergent
yeah,
children. So
yeah,
so that's hitting the kind of parent who probably pay for a tutor, or maybe a Duolingo. and that's one aspect. The next thing we want to go is private schools and special
Yeah,
educational needs schools, and then we'd love to be in the state school system, but we know that's going to take a bit longer. So we have a plan, and again, using that as a lesson for business, you have to understand the market forces around your business and what people are willing to pay and some of the challenges around getting into those businesses. I was coaching someone the other day who'd spent 25 years building his software and trying to sell it. 25 years of his
that's long.
life,
Yeah,
put in something like £750,000 of his own personal money, hadn't made a sale yet. And some of
it
the
moves so
questions
fast.
were,
Don't it?
the soft.
It's changed massively.
Well, exactly, but soft.
Yeah.
You think, well, the idea was fantastic, but at what point during those decades did you think is this worth me doing, or should I give up,
Mm,
or have I gone and showed it to enough people and done that market research to see whether there's a market for this kind of stuff? So there's interesting lessons to see there that you need to be outwardly looking as well as that introspection to see whether you know there is a market for what you're trying to build.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, so coming back to back on the mindset stuff again. This stuff goes really deep, and one of the things we've covered quite often on this podcast and channel is the manifestation side, and many people get lost in this in some other ways. But the law of attraction thinking method. What's your thoughts on that? It's just interesting to see different people's opinions.
Yeah,
Do you
I
think
mean,
that stuff works? Yeah,
I kind of love all that stuff.
yeah, me too.
It's very interesting to delve into because if you look at some of the neuroscience and the science behind a lot of this stuff, there's absolutely something in it.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
again, it goes down to that mindset. Now, whether you believe in magic or spirituality or science or whatever it is, that there's definitely something there. And those
yeah,
kind of when you look at people who are mega wealthy or mega famous or mega rich, they'll all have stories about how they wrote themselves fake checks or they did pretend Oscar speeches in front of the mirror. It's all this mental rehearsing because ultimately you have to have that kind of mentality of, do I deserve this? Am I capable of this? Am I able to accept internally that form of fame or wealth or business success? Because if you don't think you deserve it, you're probably not going to get it because internally you will hold back. You might seem
yeah,
desperate. You might not put your all into it. And then that kind of all plays into the kind of manifestation thing. Because if you act as if you are or you deserve or you hope, right, it's probably going to come your way. So I don't really
yeah.
think it's
Reminds me of
necessarily
Is it Henry Ford
magic.
quote? Which one's that? If you if you think you can or you can't, you're probably right, or something like that.
Absolutely.
It's all the Think and Grow Rich and all those sort of books. It's been out.
Yeah.
As you say, all the most successful people say it, don't they?
Absolutely. And if they do and they've been successful, then there has to be something in it. So I think now, and it all goes back to positive mindset and thinking positively. So it's all about energy and intention and things like that. And I think it's a very, very valuable lesson to think that even though we can be talented and brilliant and amazing, it's also an internal game to be conscious of our thoughts and our feelings around things and what we're trying to do, because it's very, very easy to self-sabotage ourselves and think that we don't deserve or we don't want or it's never going to come to anything. And then oddly enough, the world will almost act like a mirror and it will show us
Yeah,
exactly what we think
that's
about
exactly right.
ourselves internally. So it's really important, and especially in those times. And I could put my hand up myself and say, do you know what, I've thought bad things, especially when businesses have failed. You just think, well, this is it. I'll never be able to pick myself up again. I'll never make any
Yeah,
money again. And
it can block
if
you,
you
can't it? Yeah,
you
yeah,
could sit in that mindset and you will sit there never being able to do something and never being successful. But you have to have that self belief and self determination that you can go out and do something. So yeah, absolutely. I think there's
yeah. I think it
really,
comes
really
back
something
to
in it.
the whole saying of the law of attraction itself. I think it comes back to what we talked about at the beginning. Really, I believe it's the law of the vibration that you're in creates that's what attracts it to you. You're vibrating at a certain frequency, and
Yeah,
it allows the right things to come in because you just attract it because you're feeling good or you're thinking good and you're presenting
absolutely.
yourself well. Yeah, so it's whether you look at the science or the more spiritual side, they both make sense to me. Do you have any like particular sort of habits or practices that really result in contributing towards your success? Do you do anything?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big, big proponent in two big things for me. One is spending time in nature. And I think we are
Yeah, I
in
love
a,
that. Yeah.
even though
Yeah.
we're in a heavy technological world, and I'm all over the tech, switching off and literally walking in the forest or by the rivers or trees or in fields is extraordinarily important to clear your
Yeah.
mind, to really get away from it all. And if I don't, or I've been unwell for a few days, I really feel when I'm not. And the second thing is meditation. And I think
Yeah.
really to try and calm the mind and get yourself centered and really into a better frame of mind, meditation is absolutely essential. I actually learned TM probably about 20 years ago, and
Oh, okay. Yeah.
it
I've been into that.
is
Yeah. Yes.
properly, properly calming, and especially for people who might overthink or maybe think negatively, things like that. There are techniques out there that can really help calm yourself, and especially if you have a stressful job or you're running a business where it's stressful, you're in an early stage startup where you're pre-money like me. Having these mindful techniques or these techniques where you can essentially escape and calm yourself down and center yourself is absolutely vital, and that kind of can lead all into that kind of manifestation kind of
Yeah.
beliefs,
Yeah.
because you're tapping into to a frequency and source, and you're calming yourself down where you're in a better frame of mind, you're able to make better decisions, you're able to run your business more effectively, and these tools need to be taught. Interestingly enough, as an aside for the company Knowbotics, we really want to teach children a lot of these mindful techniques,
Oh,
nervous
brilliant.
system
Yeah, that's great.
regulation,
Yeah.
meditation, box breathing, things like that, because these are essential things that
Yeah.
we know life is stressful. We know, especially if you're neurodivergent, life can be stressful, and allowing children to learn these things at an early age will help people lifelong learn techniques that will allow them to help reduce stress, because we know stress is terrible, and getting yourself in a stressful job or a situation, if you have these techniques, they can really be life changing in terms of helping you move forward. So it's really important to build in these things into your business. Again, we can talk about all the procedures and plans and determination and hard work, but I think people don't talk enough about the relaxation and the
A lot of it was
mindfulness.
taught in schools, is
Yeah,
it?
exactly.
Like meditation and things about
Yeah.
money or all the things that are useful in life. They do waste a lot of time. I found at school. I don't know what it's like now. Obviously, it's changed probably since I was at school, but I never really felt I learned anything in school. I learned most of the things in real life, and it come later. But yeah, it's great to see that you meditate, especially breath work and meditation and all these sort of things really make a difference, especially if you have got that kind of ADHD sort of personality or
Absolutely. I mean, we're in a world where attention spans are shrinking. We're
yeah,
bombarded by notifications. It's all heightening everyone's stress. So the more we can learn about these techniques that will actually help us, connect back to ourselves, connect back to our bodies. Make us more relaxed. It's only for the good, and I think that's vital that as many people as possible learn these things, so that we're able to live better lives, and that's really what we want to do at the end of the day.
great. Yeah. Yeah, let's switch gears a bit into some tech stuff then, yeah, because you said you touched on blockchain. Blockchain and crypto was a big thing for me, especially investing side. It was my last business, which has kind of evolved into a wealth business now, this wealth revolution, all things wealth. But I do find it fascinating, the whole blockchain thing. I do feel like it is the future of finances and wealth. It's just we have to sort out the regulations and I know you've been involved in that because we spoke a bit on that. I guess the question will be, yeah, where do you see it going? What's your kind of vision for it? Because it has been a bit chaotic at the minute, very like sort of gambling, and I think we need to move from the. My thought, we need to move from the speculation stage into the real use case stage.
Yeah.
So where would you
Yeah.
say it goes
Yeah, I mean,
next?
I came at it from someone who worked in the finance sector.
Yeah,
I was involved in the regulation, obviously the technology. So when things like blockchain came along, it wasn't new technology. Everyone was saying, "Oh, distributed ledger, that kind of stuff." It's all, hang on, we've been using that in the financial system for decades, so none of it was new. But in terms of the encryption and the way it was distributed and the latest technology it was using, that was the revolution there. And for me, it was
right.
very, very
Yeah,
exciting. But the flip side was, whenever you get a new technology, and this could be anything, you do get people who just try and make money off it and essentially try and scam people. So the amount of scam coins or dodgy NFTs or people charging ridiculous amounts of money or rug pulling is just terrible. And essentially, for something like that to gain enough credibility, it needs regulation, which is kind of a shame in a way, because it was kind of started off as a big kind of FU to the banking system, and
Yeah.
everyone's going to get debanked. But at the end of the day, fraud happens, and unfortunately, there are unsavory characters out there. So it does need regulation. And thankfully, over the last 10, 15 years, it's getting a lot better. It still has somewhere to go. There are still scam coins. There are still dodgy things going on. Regulation seems to flip flop between, is it security? Is it cash? Is it a token? What is it? And that seems to change per country. We're still arguably now, I think, in stages of figuring this stuff out. The markets
Yeah.
rise and crash. There are cycles. For people who want to reliably use this stuff, there are still massive risks. So I think there's ways to go in terms of more regulation and more international regulation between how it works and what it is, because we're still not quite there yet. But the potential in terms of the technology and utility behind this is fantastic, in terms of using Web3 technology to fund businesses, or micro invest in businesses, using DAO to run organizations is absolutely wonderful. Having NFTs or utility coins to actually do something practical, which is great, rather than, say, making a JPEG image of a monkey and thinking that's worth half
Yeah.
$1 million, which is ridiculous. It had no use.
It does
So
get crazy,
I
yeah.
think we need to think very carefully about the actual practical applications of these things, the utility and the use, but also the protections for the consumer around this, in terms of protecting their investment and their money. And it is coming. And it is
Yeah.
getting there, and we're seeing massive strides forward, which is fantastic, and it's lovely to see things involved. And I have, been involved in various countries setting up regulation, and working with various teams on actually making things better, because that's the world I've come from. I've come from that heavy regulated world, and it's nice to come in and put a bit of framework around what people are doing, while also taking advantage of the great technology that allows people who wouldn't normally have access to, property or finance or loans or anything, access to things they wouldn't have dreamed of. So the dream's there, and the potential's there. It just needs to
Just
really
needs to get
batten
clearer,
down
don't it?
on
Yeah.
the fraud and the ease of use as well. There's a lot of terminology and uh, difficulty, even for people who are fairly
Yeah.
technical, getting involved in things like this. So, but it's
It
getting
just
more
needs,
mainstream.
yeah, need the
It's
front
getting
ends
there.
need improvement, don't they? A lot like it's like the early days of the internet. But I think for me, it's always been recognizing what it is. It's just really the technology, just creating databases that are immutable. And that's really valuable to stop centralized control in certain ways. Give it examples from social media, Facebook locking you out of the application and it frustrating people. So we kind of want that decentralization, but with that becomes a responsibility then, don't it? So it's how do you both of them work with regulation? Because if you do too many regulations, you stifle the innovation. I think that's where we stuck.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it's that balance, isn't it, between going too far in regulation, that it's just like all the other financial companies, but
yeah,
being
yeah.
being a bit too loose, that you're inviting that fraud and that risk. So it just needs
Especially
to
when
find
money's
that sweet
involved.
spot.
Yeah.
So exactly, and it's getting there. It's going to take a few more years to get there, but I think anybody who's involved in that world just needs to be careful of the pitfalls, and not trust everything, and do your due diligence, and as you should do with anything financial. You should be fine, but it's don't stick your life savings in something, uh, and hope that it's is gonna make you a billionaire, because quite frankly, if it sounds too good to be true, it absolutely is. So people people tend to fall for these big promises that certainly don't have a lot of substance behind it, and
Obviously, got it,
that's
yeah.
not necessarily a crypto problem. It's more of a humanity, psychology
Yeah, it's the
problem.
greed and greed
Absolutely.
kicks in, don't it, on it? Yeah, that's the thing with it. In terms of AI, where do you see that? I mean, that's probably one of the most exciting innovations, isn't it, at the minute? It's moving fast. It really stands out at the minute
I
for
mean,
people.
I
Kind
love
of
AI.
strides above it. Yeah.
The interesting thing is the capability is generally frightening in terms of what it can do. we've gone from even in the last 6 months in terms of the capabilities, it's genuinely scary. And with that, you can get great leaps forward in terms of productivity, in terms of automation, in terms of creativity. But there are negative flip sides. If you have a job that can be easily automated, or you do a kind of mundane job, then the risk to your job being automated is out there. It really is,
Yeah, yeah,
and
it's happening already.
th- it is happening already. And we are at an interesting point where this could be a massive revolution. Are we going to see mass layoffs? Are we going to see, people out of work? And
I think it's
I,
starting. My sister's just been made redundant. She was in,
well,
I think, like financial compliance, and it was checking documents. But obviously, AI can just whip through those now. But
exactly. It
it's
doesn't need a lunch break. It can work 24/7. And the,
yeah,
the flip side to that is, there will be a lot more jobs made from it. There will be, AI isn't perfect. It does make mistakes. It's not as capable as you think it is, but it's rapidly improving in a quite scary
yeah.
fashion. But people who either shy away from it or don't use it, I would encourage people to get involved and use it. It's the
But I think
people who are going to be saved almost from redundancy and things like that are the ones who've mastered this. I can automate this. I can, crunch a lot of data with this, because the barrier to entry now with a lot of these tools is incredibly low. You can go and do some
yeah,
mind-bendingly amazing things with pretty
it's like
much
the internet all
no
over again,
technical
isn't it?
experience.
It's
It's exactly the same.
yeah,
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 and that was a revolution, and it did have a hit on jobs, but it's on the flip side, you do end up with new jobs. So it happens. It's just happening at a very, very accelerated rate, which is, you know, the opportunity there for people to generate wealth and to come up with new expertise is to, in your spare time, start mastering these things and seeing what it can do. And that's what I'm doing with my company. It's how can I use this latest technology to actually make a positive difference in the world.
there's
And there's
so many
this
opportunities there.
opportunity there, and that's what everyone could do. And you could do anything with this technology, and I'm very bullish and excited about it. But I'm also very wary that we can't get to a point where it replaces humans and human interaction, because no matter how creative or wonderful or amazing you think a lot of these interactions are, they do not ever equal what a human can do. So even though I'm going into
We need it,
helping,
don't we? It's like you said, Matrix. Like,
it's
we
not
need
it's not just need. I
human.
think it's essential.
Yeah, yeah,
Especially with me, I'm working with kids who have got learning difficulties and neurodiversity. Then the danger there is, are we replacing teachers? And the answer is absolutely not. That is not what's happening. We are using it as a tool that's not only helping the student, but also helping the teacher and helping the school at the same time. And that's what's really
yeah.
important. We're not replacing it. We're augmenting and helping by using that data structure to say, okay, these are the times when your child is overwhelmed and stressed. This is the time when we had to, take them into meditation or breathing exercises. This is the time when they completely collapsed and crumbled and couldn't do this kind of maths exercise. And here are the strengths and weaknesses in terms of what we spotted. Here's the best way to relate to this child. This child responds to, walk through examples or, text or audible instructions or gamified ways of learning. So it's giving information to the humans to allow those humans, if you're the student, to understand yourself better, or as a parent and teacher, understand whoever you're teaching on a much better, deeper basis. So that's the interesting things that you could do. But again, that's that humanity uh, never needs to be lost, because I think no matter how good tech gets at
Yeah.
systemizing or
You don't want to go
automating things,
actually thinking, do you? Like I found myself in a
yeah,
shop sometimes. You need to think before you use it in a way. If you don't do that, you kind
absolutely.
of get
And
lazy almost.
if
You know.
well, I mean, because I've had to for my job, I'm all over this stuff, and the more you use it, the more you realize that it is a machine, and you
Yeah.
can often get sucked into thinking that there's some kind of intelligence out there, and there isn't really. It's
No.
ones and zeros and it's algorithms, and it can do some really clever stuff, but it
But
does
just needs a
need
car.
that
You found
kind of
it's a bit of a people pleaser sometimes, especially ChatGPT. It gets a bit people
yeah, it
pleaser.
kind of annoys me in the fact that often
It
these
is.
things are tuned to be slightly sycophantic, and it's like,
Yeah.
well, no, I'd rather be told I'm wrong. or that
Yeah,
what
it can
I'm
be funny.
researching is wrong, rather than you making up weird stuff to try to prove me right. So
So I think
it's
this site
interesting.
I've seen somebody set up recently. It was for AI agents. It was called Hire a Human or something. And it was where AI agents could go to hire humans and do
Yes,
stuff.
yeah,
Oh, well, have you
but
seen this
that's
one?
that may well be the
Yeah,
future of work. I
yeah,
can see,
it's interesting, isn't it?
universal basic income. I can see humans
Yeah,
working less, and I can see automated agents working. And there are some things that people can do that AI can't, and maybe they'll be hiring us. We'll pay you.
yeah.
It's an
Well, some people
interesting
will
world,
do
and that we
that.
we could go there. And if you can spend your days painting and walking in nature and spending time with your kids, then what a fabulous world the world could be in a
We
few
can
years'
find
time.
small fulfillment, can't we? But I think some people will struggle with that. You, it's like people who rely on benefits and things like that. You can get yourself in a kind of rut. You
You,
still need
you
fulfillment, don't you?
can, but
So
then it's
I guess
it's
it's what you
about
work on.
it's about a value. I mean, we've got into a point in our economy where it's very money driven, work driven, and it, it's an opportunity now to completely reinvent that, where we don't necessarily have to do that. And jobs won't go away. You need your doctors and your nurses and your policemen and your firefighters and your construction workers and your plumbers and your electricians and all that good stuff. So, but a lot of other jobs are going to change, and it's going to be a really
Yeah,
interesting future where I think we're going to have to put humanity and what's good for humanity first, rather than money making productivity, because I think that
yeah.
kind of
Even Elon
relationship's
Musk said this.
breaking down, which is
Yeah,
interesting how that's going to be.
it is interesting to think how it will get. I could always foresee the internet a lot and where that was going because it weren't as. But the AI is just it's explosive and you just can't imagine what direction it's going to go in. But it's like I find it exciting, definitely. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing where it
One
goes.
of the interesting things that I was reading was someone saying kids born now, kids who are 7, 8, 9, 10, maybe a bit older, they're probably never going to have to work.
Right.
We're in a time now where they will graduate or leave school or university, and their technology will be so advanced that they won't need to. It's done, and that's a
Can't
really
imagine it because
interesting
in our
concept.
lifetime
Well, exactly.
we'll
So
still have to work, haven't we?
you're always
It's
taught that you're going to have to work, and that may well, that relationship between that generation of wealth and that value, and we ascribe so much of ourselves and our value to us working or earning a living, and that actually might be breaking down, which leads a real prospect of who we are and what we are as humans. And this kind of revolution,
Mm,
it might be quick, it might be long and drawn out, but we may well be, and I certainly believe we are, in a way of kind of decoupling what that is, and we're going to end
must
up
have
at a
an aim,
stage. Exactly. So we're at a stage where that is interesting, and we're going to have to really re-examine ourselves as a species, as in terms of what we are and what we do, and that's going to be fascinating in terms of doing it, because I'm a utopian. I do believe in humanity, and ultimately humans are good people. And
Yeah.
we can look at the world sometimes and shake our heads, but I always say, wherever I go in the world and whatever culture I go into, you always find kind, generous, open, beautiful,
Yeah.
amazing people, and people at heart, most 99.9% of people are decent, good, kind people. And that's why I'm very, very positive about the world, is no matter what happens in terms of technology or whatever life throws at us, we as humans will find a way to grow and thrive and prosper, and it will turn out good.
Yeah. I like that. That's a good view. I like that. Yeah. How are we doing? So 550. We'll finish off with a few sort of success questions. Let me have a look what we got here. Yeah, so what does success mean to you now compared to early in your journey? Is one I think to sort of finish this up.
Yeah, so earlier it was money. It's how much money I'm earning. That's radically changed. For me, success now is what impact I can make. Of course, you'd like to know, you like to think you can make an impact on the world, and there are some people out there doing that. With what I'm trying to do now, is I'm just trying to do whatever good I can to help as many, for me it's students, as possible. And if I can
Yeah.
help one or 1,000 or 1,000,000 or a billion, I'm happy. And that's kind of the phase I'm in now. So yes, of course, there is a monetary aspect to that as well. I would like to make money, but that's not my primary focus now. It's what impact can I have, and how can I use my skills that I've built up in my career to make that impact. So the whole
Oh, nice.
success
Yeah.
kind of equation is completely different now.
Love it. Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, what do you think people are really searching for when they say they want more money? Because people always feel like they want more, but for me, it's just, yeah,
Yeah, I mean that's the thing
yeah,
because people think that it's money they want, but it's not money. It's what they can get with the money. Are you going to feel
yeah.
more secure?
Oh, so it's the feeling. The
Do you
feeling.
think you're going to feel
Yeah,
happier, right? Do you think you're going to be
yeah,
able to maybe um, have a house, which leads to that kind of, you have a home. So money is a tool, or if you're into the manifestation stuff, money is energy, but it's a means to
yeah.
an end.
I'll bet that.
It can it set my kids up? Can it, help my family? Can it put food on the table? Can it give me security? So ultimately, I think our pursuit of money is not necessarily what people are pursuing. I think it's that feeling of what you're after, that safety, that security, whatever those accumulation of items or belongings that you get that will give you that feeling. And the cool thing is you can get a lot of those feelings by doing other things these days, and actually
Yeah,
doing good in the world, but also having that sense of safety and security. And if we go back to our conversations about where the future is going, I think the decoupling of that is going to be very exciting because I think we'll be able to get all the good things that we possibly wanted from money, and we might be able to possibly get them to other means in the future. And that's very, very exciting. So, are we going to have to redefine our notions of wealth, and what that means? And we equate wealth with money, but is wealth meaning I'm healthy, or does it mean that I'm with my kids? Does it mean that I'm doing good in the world? And all of those things are equally, or if not more, valid. And that's really important to do it. And money is just really, when you think about it, it is energy, or it's an
it
exchange
is
of value,
actually.
and that's all money
Yeah,
is. It's a promise there for X amount of work, I'll give you X amount of this value that you can then exchange for, your lodgings or your food or, your entertainment. So it's a transaction, and those transactions can evolve and change over time. And that's what's really exciting about the world, and where we're going in terms of wealth and its journey.
great. Yeah, yeah, that's a good place to finish. But yeah, where can people find you? It's been great. I enjoyed the conversation. It's been really, yeah, really, really great for the channel. So,
So
yeah,
if you want my website for my business, it's nobotic.ai. You can go on
okay,
LinkedIn, so you can just search my name, Simon Barry, or you can search up my company, Robotics AI. It's on there. Or I have a podcast which is centered around neurodiversity, which I call NeuroQuirks. So again, anyone who maybe has kids with neurodiversity or is neurodiverse themselves or just likes to think creatively, it's mostly positive, but tips and tricks to help people who
well, nice.
think a bit differently to do different in life. We're on about episode 23 now. We release an episode a week, and it's just really positive way just to think positively about something that is unfortunately still deeply stigmatized, but hopefully won't
Yeah,
be in the future.
brilliant. Okay, yeah, thanks for coming on, and yeah, best of luck with the business. I'm sure it'll do amazing. And yeah, let's end there.
My pleasure.